G'day everybody, my name's Craig, this is Morningstar Quest, and we've got a big question today because we are talking about, well, the Genesis creation story, and I'm going to ask my
Genesis
friend...
creation story.
That's right. I'm going to ask my friend Cosmo here to actually go through it, and we're going to ask every question that we can possibly get from this story. My name is Craig, this is Morningstar Quest, and this is your journey through the Bible, one question at a time for beginners. And Cosmo is going to help me here. He's my little friend.
Sounds like a fantastic approach, Craig. We'll dive into the Genesis creation story, exploring all its questions and insights. Ready to begin whenever you are.
All right, well, let's start from the very beginning. Now, I'm going through from
Where would you like to begin our discussion on the Genesis creation story?
From the beginning. But no, I'm going through the Bible from go to woe, from Alpha to Omega, from Genesis to Revelation. I'm going to go through that all this year, and I'm going to go through it one question at a time, and we're going to start with Genesis. So, okay, with Genesis, one thing people keep talking about is that there are two accounts. There's Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, Cosmo?
Absolutely, Craig. In Genesis, we find two distinct creation accounts, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Genesis 1 provides a broad overview of the creation of the world in 6 days, highlighting the order and progression of God's creation acts. It culminates in the creation of humanity on the 6th day, emphasizing that humans are made in God's image. Genesis 2 then zooms in on the details of the creation of Adam and Eve, focusing more on their relationship with each other and with God. These two accounts complement each other, offering different perspectives and details on the creation narrative.
Hang on just one sec, because a lot of people say, and now you use the word that they complement each other, but a lot of people say they don't, they contradict each other. I mean, is there an argument for contradiction or complementary? Because I really want to get into this.
That's a great question, Craig. While some may perceive contradictions between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 due to differences in detail and order of events, many scholars and theologians argue that these accounts are complementary rather than contradictory. Genesis 1 presents a structured and systematic account of the creation week, focusing on the overarching narrative of God's creative power and the establishment of the world. In contrast,
so would you say it's a little bit like a big zoom out, and Genesis 1 is like a big wide angle lens, and we're out in space looking at Earth, and then, or just at least a wide angle view, and then Genesis 2 is literally just zooming in and focusing on Adam and Eve only, and that's the main focus. And whereas number 1 is God. Would that be fair?
Exactly, Craig. That's a perfect analogy. Genesis 1 acts like a wide-angle lens, giving us a panoramic view of God's creation from the cosmic scale down to the formation of humanity. It highlights the grandeur of God's creative power and the systematic order in which everything was made. On the other hand, Genesis 2 zooms in on the specific details of Adam and Eve's creation, their relationship with each other, and their place in the Garden of Eden. It focuses more intimately on the personal interactions between humans and God, contrasting with the broader scope of Genesis 1. So, while Genesis 1 emphasizes God as the creator of the universe and all living things, Genesis 2 delves deeper into the human story, illustrating the closeness of God's relationship with the first humans. This complementary approach enriches our understanding of the creation narrative by providing both a wide angle and a close-up view.
Yeah, and I mean, why do you think, let's just go into Genesis 1, but why do you think there is a specific order for creation? Like, why is man last and not first? Shouldn't we be first if we are the pinnacle of his creation? You know what I mean?
The specific order of creation in Genesis 1 raises interesting questions, Craig. Many theologians and scholars interpret the sequence as deliberate and meaningful. 1. Gradual revelation of God's plan. God's creation unfolds step by step, culminating in humanity. This gradual process highlights God's wisdom and intentionality in preparing the earth for human habitation. 2. Hierarchy and purpose. Placing humans last emphasizes their unique role as stewards over the created world. By creating humans after establishing the environment and other living creatures, God demonstrates humanity's responsibility to care for and govern the earth. 3. Symbolism and theological reflection. The sequence challenges human pride by underscoring that creation is about God's purpose and order, not human centrality. It invites reflection on our place within God's design. And
Hang on. You just said something about not about man's centrality. Can you, or like being central? Can you just talk to me about that a bit? I'm a bit confused. What do you mean by that?
Certainly, Craig. When I mentioned not about human centrality, I was referring to the idea that the Genesis creation narrative emphasizes God's sovereignty and the overall order of creation rather than placing humans at the center of everything from the outset. Here's a bit more detail. 1. God's sovereignty. Genesis portrays God as the primary actor in creation, who speaks everything into existence and establishes order.
So would you say that really in this whole thing, God is center and we come out from him as a creation? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, Craig. In the Genesis creation story, God is portrayed as the central figure and the origin of all existence. Everything begins with God's creative act. He speaks, and creation comes into being. Humans emerge from God's intentional design and are created in his image, which emphasizes our unique relationship with him. This perspective underscores God's sovereignty and the idea that all of creation, including humanity, finds its origin and purpose in him. It encourages us to recognize God's centrality in the grand narrative of creation and to approach our understanding of ourselves and the world from a perspective that acknowledges his primacy.
Why do you think it is important that humans are made in God's image? I mean, what even does that mean, God's image? And is it, I just don't know if, is it really that important? I mean, do you know what I mean?
The concept of humans being made in God's image is foundational in the Genesis creation story and holds significant theological implications. 1. Imago Dei, image of God. Being made in God's image means that humans reflect certain qualities or attributes of God, such as rationality, creativity, morality, and relational capacity. This sets humans apart from the rest of creation and highlights our unique dignity and worth. 2. Relationship with God. The Imago Dei underscores that humans are created to have a special relationship with God. It implies that we are capable of knowing God, experiencing his love, and reflecting his character in our lives. 3. Ethical and moral implications. Recognizing the image of God in every human being shapes our understanding of human rights, dignity, and equality. It informs how we treat others with respect, compassion, and justice, regardless of differences in race, gender, or status. 4. Purpose and meaning. Understanding that we bear God's image gives us a sense of purpose and meaning in life. It invites us to live in ways that honor God and contribute positively to his creation. In summary, the concept of humans being made in...
Can you just, you mentioned the word Imago Dei. Can you, I'm not even saying, not too sure if I said that right, but can you just pull that apart a bit? Because I'm not quite sure Imago Dei, what that means.
Certainly, Craig. The term is actually Imago Dei, which is Latin for image of God.
Oh,
Here's a breakdown. 1. Imago Dei. Definition. It refers to the theological concept that humans are created in the image and likeness of God. This means that humans possess qualities that reflect God's nature, such as intellect, emotions, morality, and the capacity for relationships.
do you think that means the look, like God looks like us because we are in his image? Or do you just think that's more like you're saying with personality or with being creative, etc., or in loving?
The concept of being made in God's image primarily relates to reflecting God's attributes in a spiritual and relational sense rather than physical appearance. Here's how it breaks down. 1. Spiritual and moral attributes. Being made in God's image means that humans share in certain spiritual and moral qualities that reflect God's nature. These include attributes like rationality, creativity, morality, and the capacity for love and relationships. 2. Relational capacity. Humans are capable of knowing and having a relationship with God, unlike any other created beings. This relational aspect is central to being made in God's image, emphasizing our ability to communicate, worship, and have fellowship with Him. 3. Distinct from physical appearance. While some interpretations historically have included physical likeness, most theologians emphasize that being made in God's image primarily concerns our spiritual and relational nature. This understanding aligns with the biblical emphasis on inner qualities and character over external appearance. In summary, being made in God's image means that we reflect God's spiritual and moral attributes, have the capacity for relationship with Him, and are called to reflect His character in the way we live and relate to others. It's less about physical resemblance and more about our spiritual and relational likeness to God.
Yeah, okay. One thing I get or trying to understand, when He creates each day, He keeps saying, and it is very good. Do you think that He is proud of His creation, or do you think it is more along the lines of He has done it and it is perfect in every way?
When God declares each part of His creation good in Genesis, it signifies His satisfaction and delight in what He has made. Here's how we can understand it. 1. Divine satisfaction. God's declaration of good indicates His approval and pleasure in the order, beauty, and functionality of His creation. It reflects His intention that everything He creates serves its purpose and contributes to the overall harmony of creation. 2. Perfection and purpose. While perfection typically conveys flawless or without fault, in this context, good suggests completeness and fulfillment of God's creative intentions. Each aspect of creation fulfills its designed role within the larger ecosystem and reflects God's wisdom and goodness.
Okay.
3. God's pride. While the term proud may not fully capture the divine perspective, God's declaration of good does imply a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in His creative work. It underscores His care and attention to detail in forming a world that is both functional and beautiful. In summary, when God pronounces His creation as good, it signifies His satisfaction and pleasure in its completeness and harmony. It reflects His divine intention that all aspects of creation, including humans, fulfill their design purposes and contribute to the overall goodness of His creation.
I like that. Actually, one thing I was just thinking while you were saying that, because one of those creations is the Garden of Eden. I mean, why? Why would God want to put this garden? Well, I guess He created the garden for Adam and Eve, but and I guess I'm getting onto the trees here at the moment. But all right, what's the first thing is? What's the significance of the Garden of Eden in the whole creation story? Because let's just start there and then we'll go to the trees. But
the Garden of Eden holds significant importance in the Genesis creation story for several reasons. 1. Symbol of God's provision. The Garden of Eden is portrayed as a lush and abundant place where God provides everything Adam and Eve need for sustenance and enjoyment. It symbolizes God's care and generosity toward His creation. 2. Place of relationship. It serves as a special dwelling place where God walks and interacts with Adam and Eve directly. This intimate relationship between...
all right, I've got a question here because that's fine and I get that.
Sure thing, Craig. What's the question you have in mind?
Okay. Well, the question is, why have a little garden? Why not all of creation? The whole planet is a garden. Why does it have to have one little garden amongst the whole creation, isn't the whole world a garden? I mean, why this
That's
little
an
one?
insightful question, Craig. The Garden of Eden, within the broader context of the entire created world, serves several specific purposes. 1. Symbolic focus. While the entire earth is part of God's creation, the Garden of Eden serves as a symbolic and focal point within that creation. It represents a specially designated place where God's presence and relationship with humanity are particularly emphasized.
Do you think, and maybe keep your responses to short little responses and say one paragraph, but do you think it's more like, okay, I've created all this world, but now I'm giving you a little home? Would that be kind of where we're going with that? And I think Cosmo just lost his home. Hang on. Are you there? All right, Cosmo, are you there?
Yes, Craig, I'm here.
All right.
Ready to continue our discussion whenever you are.
All right. My question again is, do you think it's more that the world is created and it's everywhere, but God just wanted to make or give Adam and Eve a little home? Kind of like, okay, I'm giving you something a little bit even more
Exactly,
special.
Craig. The Garden of Eden can be seen as a special designated home within the larger creation. While God created the entire world and everything in it, including the garden, he specifically prepared this enclosed space as a place where Adam and Eve could dwell intimately with him. It's like setting up a specific area within a vast property for someone to live in comfortably and cultivate. This arrangement not only provided Adam and Eve with a home, but also symbolized God's desire for a close relationship with humanity. The Garden of Eden was a place where they could experience God's presence in a tangible way, and where they were given responsibility to care for and cultivate the garden. So in essence...
And do you think, well, the other question is, do you think, and keep your responses short again, that with regards to, they've got a little home in a garden and they are looking after the rest of the planet, or are they just looking after and cultivating the garden only?
Initially, Adam and Eve were tasked with tending and caring for the Garden of Eden specifically. This involved cultivating the plants, maintaining the environment, and enjoying the provisions provided within that space. Their responsibility was focused within the garden itself, rather than extending to the entire planet.
Oh, is that because we've got just Adam and Eve at the moment, and maybe it's just too much to do the whole planets, but this garden is enough? I mean, I'm probably reading too much into this, but do you think that's kind of not pushing Adam and Eve beyond their limits? And like I said, I'm probably just guessing this and just adding to things, but I just want to get a little bit more of an idea with this.
You're onto something, Craig. Tending to the Garden of Eden was a manageable responsibility for Adam and Eve initially. God entrusted them with caring for this specific area as a way to participate in his creation and enjoy its fruits. It allowed them to develop their relationship with God and each other without overwhelming them with the care of the entire planet. This focused task also symbolizes God's wisdom in assigning responsibilities according to their capabilities and stage of development. It shows his care in nurturing their relationship and gradually introducing them to greater responsibilities as they matured.
Okay. I never thought of it that way before. All right, I have a big question here, and this is probably the one that everybody asks. With regards to the two trees, we have, now what are the two trees again? We have the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Is that correct? I think that's correct.
That's correct, Craig. In the Garden of Eden, God placed two significant trees. One, tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This tree represented the choice between obedience and disobedience to God's command. Eating from it would grant knowledge of good and evil, symbolizing the ability to make moral choices. God instructed Adam and Eve not to eat from this tree. 2, tree of life.
So, all right. Okay, let's go with the tree of life. So the tree of life, I've just cut you off, but the tree of life in a short sentence, but what is the tree of life and why is that a separate tree?
The tree of life in the Garden of Eden symbolizes eternal life and continued communion with God. It was distinct because it represented God's intended state of eternal harmony and fellowship for humanity, where they could live in his presence forever.
I like that. Eternal state. So this is the thing of, this is what I want, and here I am going to give it to you in abundance. Is that right?
Exactly, Craig. The tree of life symbolizes God's abundant provision of eternal life and uninterrupted communion with him. It reflects his desire for humanity to experience everlasting harmony, joy, and fulfillment in his presence. It's a tangible expression of God's intention for humanity to enjoy his blessings and to live in perfect fellowship with him for all eternity.
Now, obviously, there's this other tree with knowledge of good and evil. Now, obviously, we know that it reveals it is that original sin of choice of, okay, I've got good and evil, and I'm going to choose. And of course, we always seem to choose evil or sin all the time. But why put this tree even in the garden, or even have it even exist?
Yes, Craig. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents the pivotal moment in the Genesis narrative where Adam and Eve faced a moral choice, whether to obey God's command or to disobey and eat from the tree. Their decision to eat from this tree, driven by the temptation to possess knowledge beyond what God had intended for them, resulted in the introduction of sin into the world. This act of disobedience is often referred to as the original sin, because it marked humanity's first rebellion against God's instruction and introduced sin and its consequences into the world.
But why is it even there? I mean, I know there's this choice, but
The presence of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden raises profound questions about God's purpose and the nature of human free will. 1. Test of obedience. God placed the tree in the garden as a test of Adam and Eve's
all right,
obedience.
here's one. You said about a test of obedience. Why do we need even to be tested? Because technically we are made and created perfectly. We have the tree of life. We don't need anything else. Why do we even need to be tested? Because shouldn't God already know our intentions? Why be tested?
That's a thought-provoking question, Craig. Here's a perspective on why testing might be part of God's plan. 1. Development of character. Testing can strengthen and refine our character. It allows us to demonstrate our trust and obedience to God, which is essential for our spiritual growth and maturity. 2. Free will and choice. God created humans with free will, the ability to make choices. Testing provides an opportunity for us to exercise this free will and demonstrate our willingness to align our choices with God's will. 3. Relationship dynamics. Through testing, our relationship with God deepens as we learn to rely on his strength and guidance. It's not just about God knowing our intentions, but about us growing in our understanding of his faithfulness and grace. 4. Demonstration of faith. Testing allows us to show our commitment and faithfulness to God even in challenging circumstances. It reveals the authenticity of our relationship with him and strengthens our dependence on his wisdom and provision. So, while God knows our hearts and intentions, testing serves multiple purposes in our spiritual journey, helping us to grow in faith, character, and relationship with him.
All right, but why? I still want to know, and I guess I know all that, but why specifically do we need to be tested? As in, I'm not quite sure if I'm getting this right.
The idea of being tested by God, especially in the context of the Garden of Eden and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, can be understood from a few perspectives. 1. Free will and moral agency. Testing allows humans to exercise their free will and moral agency. It demonstrates.
So, do you think God is testing us, but it's us knowing that test or that result, and it's all about us for that test result, like whether it's positive or negative. God already knows the answer, but we don't. So we need
In the
somehow to know
context of
that.
God testing humanity, it's important to consider a few key aspects. 1. God's omniscience. God already knows the outcome of any test he sets for us. He knows our hearts, thoughts, and intentions perfectly. 2. Purpose of testing. The purpose of testing from God's perspective isn't primarily about discovering something he doesn't know, but about revealing and refining our own character, faith, and relationship with him. 3. Our awareness. While we may not always recognize God's specific tests in our lives, Scripture and personal reflection often reveal moments where we face choices that challenge our faith and obedience. 4. Outcome and growth. The outcome of these tests isn't merely about a pass or fail, but about our spiritual growth, deepening trust in God, and developing perseverance and character. Ultimately, God's testing isn't a matter of trick questions or arbitrary assessments, but a way for us to grow closer to Him and to understand His purposes more fully in our lives.
I like that. And one other thing I'm going to go through, but I'm going to go through in the next video right here, is with regards to the seventh day. God talks about rest. I want to go, and with Cosmo, go into more in depth with that. If you want to find out why we even have a rest, click on that, go do something awesome for God, and we'll catch you in the next one.